you. Hello, everybody. I am Abdi Lajavardi, and I want to welcome you to another segment of Education for a Better World. Today, I have one of my dear colleagues and friends, Dr. Chris Page, as our guest. And, I am really delighted for you to meet him and hear about his perspective. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's delightful to have you here. And as always, I want to start with our guests, to ask them, tell us about themselves, about their life. How did it start and how did your journey got you to this point? So let's start with that if you don't mind.
Well, I guess, where I am now is kind of where the story ends for today anyway. But, I got my start, many years ago, and it didn't start with education. I wasn't a great student. I grew up in jogging distance from Yankee Stadium in Manhattan, and I grew up in a big family, so there was always something going on. And my family were athletes, so there was always a football, a baseball, or whatever. And if I couldn't find it in the house, I didn't have to go far to find a stickball game or something. So it was very interactive, and I loved sports. But when I weighed in for football, ninth grade at 78 pounds, I think my football career ended there. But that was just what I had. I started delivering newspapers when I was 9. Came home from school, and my mother said, I found you a job. You're going to start delivering newspapers. And I made 10 cents a day. And I was the envy of the neighborhood. And it's a real interesting story, and I bring it up for a lot of reasons, is that my success today goes back to delivering newspapers and what I learned then about consistency and going forward and whatever. By the time I was 10, I had 3 jobs. I had been seen deliver newspapers for that one. And then another newspaper contacted me and they said, hey, we see you out there every day. You want to do ours too? And I worked bingo hall. I was 10 years old. I had 3 jobs. I worked 7 days a week. And it all kind of took a very, very different turn just a few days after my 13th birthday. And it was a cold January Saturday morning, and had just come in from deliver my newspapers. And I came into the kitchen to thaw off. And in short, my shirt caught fire from the kitchen stove, and my entire body was in flames. And I literally ran for my life into the living room, hoping that I could smother it on the carpet. And now, it didn't really work. My mother came downstairs from the bath. My sisters were downstairs, and they said, oh, well, the twins are fighting again. And so this kind of screaming, and it was just very typical for our household. It was a very high energy household. And my mother put a sheet around me and put it out. And then I spent the next 30 days in a strict isolation burn unit at St. Mary's Hospital in Passaic, New Jersey. And aside from it being the most challenging, the worst pain you can describe, even just having to sit in a hospital room for 30 days by yourself, even if you were fine, that would be hard, especially if you were committed to a bed and you couldn't lay on your back. But the time alone, really got to me. And, I thought, well, I always wanted to play the electric guitar, but my parents wouldn't let me because they're Catholic. And they just saw, well, that was a bad thing. And if you want music, learn the organ and you can play in the church. And I didn't want to do any of that. But I did get an opportunity that was kind of a gateway for me thinking about myself and my future, and just thinking without everything else going on. It's not easy to get 30 days to yourself, but in those days, there weren't cell phones and a lot of television and radio like there is today. So, the radio was there, but you couldn't get it in the hospital anyway. It was a lot of time alone thinking. And when I did get out, my father took me to a music store, and I got my first electric guitar, and played it a lot. And the reason why I learned, I got an electric six string, my twin brother got a bass, and we said, hey, we're going to play these things like professionals. And we didn't know how to hold them, let alone play them, but we knew how to deliver newspapers every day. And we knew that when that truck comes around and drops those papers off, it's time. My father said, you don't walk there, you run there. You don't ever get caught walking on the job, you run. So we had a very strict ethical thing. And back east, there was a pride of doing everything right, no matter what it was. So we figured, hey, we know that if we apply ourselves, we can finish newspapers in an hour. So let's do that. And right after that, we'll practice our instruments for an hour. And if we do that every day, then we'll learn how to play. And it sounds so simple, but it works. Well, one thing led to another. I eventually moved out to California. I was a music major at Rutgers, and walked away in the middle of it just to go out to California and start a band with my brother. And we did that, and we did okay. But after a while, we stopped loving it. And what I missed was the dream that I always had, was to be a music teacher. That's why I went to school, to get a degree, and I didn't do it. So I went back to college just because I hated my day job and always got passed up. And I started right away. I went right on through it, and I found I really liked it. I found that school was fun. I liked the papers, and I liked the speeches, and I liked the teams and being in class. And I really looked forward to it. And funny, as soon as I graduated, the university hired me, and then I started working on a master's degree. And again, without even asking, they asked me to teach. And as soon as I walked into the classroom, it was so natural for me. And, for whatever reason, I'd been a performer, I'd been in front of the microphone and the lights and all that. So I was very comfortable there. But after a while, you looking at these students and seeing how they are really impacted, how they're saying, hey, this is a fun class, or it's 10 o'clock already, or being able to teach people public speaking, which is maybe as hard as it can get for some, and then walking away just saying, I'll never be nervous again, I'll never have the anxiety, and it's a lot of fun. And then years and years later, I start running into people here and there. I found out, one's a vice president of a bank, and another had terrified of speeches, going to Sacramento and standing in front of the state legislator, and pleading with the government to make laws for kids with some special needs that just weren't getting help. And after a while, you start to see a legacy, a living legacy. Really, what it is groups and groups of people who really have had good experiences. And college has changed. It's not the same as it was. And the traditional higher education was old habits die hard, but the students are changing at a rapid pace, and the school are not always meeting their needs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that really exciting and complex life story, and the fact that I had the pleasure of working with you and know you firsthand. I know a lot of benefits has come from that journey to who you are today, and how you are inspiring other students, other colleagues in at your work. So my question to you is, because I know you're a dynamic teacher and you're a great educator. So if you had some advice for some of the teachers that are watching this program, what would it be? I mean, if there are students that right now finishing their programs and they're thinking like you, maybe education is the area they want to get into. What are some of the things that people can do to both improve their teaching techniques, to make their education more effective? What are some of those things that teachers can do?
Well, I think one thing is to let go of the old ways. And I think a lot of times teachers teach by mimicking their favorite teacher, or they want to be that person. And But due to just incredible changes in technology that really have just rocked the education world upside down, the pandemic leading to really a rapid decentralization of the traditional school system. So a lot of things are changing, and tomorrow's teacher will not rely on what they did this year. It changes every year what they need to learn, whether it's a technology or, of course, the big thing is make the main point, and that's the students, and find a way to reach them, whatever it takes with technology, high tech, low tech, no tech. That's the best is look the student in the eye and say, what can I do to make this work for you?
Very well said. And now, from a perspective of looking at, the environment that we are in today, right?
Yes.
So you see, there are some challenges for the education industry, and as well as there are some opportunities. Can you name a few of what you consider to be challenges of today? And then we get on the same side, on the other side of it, with opportunities. Let's start.
Well, I think the big challenge we've seen over the last couple of years are professors and teachers at every level learning to still do their work despite the circumstances. In this case, they had classes with no students in it, so it changed everything, and it changed the overall pedagogy and how they think about teaching. And it was an incredible barrier trying to reach these students. Some of them just sitting at home, lying on their bed, logging in and kind of listening. And some of them there up front and just eager to learn. Some of them with no video, you don't know whether they're there or not. It stretched faculty and teachers to really, really rethink the way they teach. And so while that was a barrier, I generally think the educators did fairly well adjusting. And now that they know the old way and they've learned some of the new way, and with the new technology that gets better all the time, the teacher of tomorrow will embrace those changes and find ways they can reach their students better than they did before.
So, what are some of the things that you see as opportunities? That, like you're talking, you're pointing out as how to utilize what we have learned through the challenges to apply as a way of future. What are some of the things that you think teachers can do or education providers can do to make the programs more exciting and more engaging and more relevant, for that matter?
Well, relevance is very important now. It's and for the teachers, sometimes students don't know their major. They're not really sure what their future is, but being able to teach the real key skills. I always tell my students that you may very well be spending the rest of your career working on a product that hasn't been invented yet. So that's the way to look at things. Some of the best advice I got was from, Dr. Brent Duncan, who told me that it's not always, what you have in life, but how you learn to adopt and adapt to the changes in front of you. And we can learn a job and go do it for a few years, but that can become obsolete. And the idea is that it's the learning that matters more than a specific item. And that means that, when you work on specific items, like for instance, I'm going to teach a class on how to overcome anxiety in public speaking. That's a class that will start seeing some real benefits, usually at the 2 or 3 week mark. And it gets better and better and better. And the repetition of it that I do, really from a lot of things that I learned in the music days and the art days, and how to look at a camera and pretend I see 10,000 people in the audience and let that excite you. And it really works after the time they start overcoming it. Now, there's some other classes that, you'll learn from them, but they'll pay off maybe later down the road. Maybe I also teach a class on critical thinking in the workplace. And that has some immediate benefits, but the further that time goes, the bigger the benefits get as the student takes the class and learns how to build on some very basic skills that can help. Um, I think the teacher that really can do this the best will be flexible, because a lot of these students, they want to go home and do their homework, but they have to go to work. They have a job, or an athlete. I've got to practice, and then tomorrow we travel. We're going to go up to Northern California and play, a tournament, and then come back. And then Sunday I get back, and my mom and dad are having a barbecue. There's a lot of things going on. So the student who is going to want a lot of flexibility. Maybe that student wants to do his or her work at night, maybe in the morning, maybe doing a little bit while commuting or listening to a book, so the ability that a student and faculty can both meet through technology that allows this flexibility, and meet students in various needs. Some students are going to learn by reading it. They want to look at a document and analyze it. Some students learn better by hearing it or seeing it in a presentation. So the ability to deliver through what communicators call multiple channels, that one way or another will reach the student, whether it's his learning style, peak times and flexibility, whatever it is. That's what the student wants tomorrow, and that's what the teacher of tomorrow is going to have to deliver.
Thank you very much. Very well. So now I want to ask you about something that I know when you look at individuals like yourself, that you've gone to school for many years, you have accomplished a lot of wonderful and prestigious achievement throughout your career. Usually they are main reasons that individuals get to those points, but at the same time, like you mentioned about the incidents with the fire that happened in your home, or other things that throughout our life happens, there are challenges, right? They're not all high marks of achievement.
Yes.
There are certain challenges that somehow requires us to come much higher than those challenges, sometimes pulls us down, or use the energy, use a certain level of change in our life to overcome those challenges. And a lot of people look at those as professional mindset, right? Or certain way that you will go in life toward them. So let me ask you, what is your definition of professional mindset? Because everybody has a definition for it. And then follow up to that, I want to know how that has affected you throughout your life.
Yes, it can be seen in a lot of different ways. I see, and I would define professional mindset through two different avenues. One is a professional does not quit when it gets hard, or does not slow down. The professional at that time actually speeds up, because he's getting closer to the goal. But on the other hand, I look at through the channel of the social sciences lens. And for professional, that means there's customers to consider, stockholders, stakeholders, the community in which you operate, the government unities that allow you to do business and help you to do business, and come around and collect 4 times a year. There's also uh, our primary audience customers, but then the secondary are those who they're affected by. So a professional mindset really can, in addition to a direct of getting the job done, getting them done well, but also doing it through, what looks at a world of business, government, and society, and the continuous interactions among them, and who is involved and how they're involved in primary and secondary. There's a lot to consider, and that includes, taking care of your company, taking care of your customers, but also being responsible and ethical, and um, being the best you can be always, every day.
So now, what do you think about mentorship and mentors in general? And how do you have any mentors, or have you had any mentors? And what role do they play in your life?
Uh, there have been times where I've been assigned to mentor new faculty. So I've mentored hundreds of faculty over the years. When I started teaching in 2000, I had two mentors. I was only supposed to get one, but I think, one person didn't know what the other, and I got two. And I said, I'll take two. I'll take two. Most people would say, oh, I did one. I don't need another, do I? No, I took two. And one of them actually became my mentor over time. But it's very, organic. I didn't walk up to him and said, can you be my mentor? He was assigned to me for a very short period of time, for a class. And after that, I think we just stuck together. I learned from him, and he was a good, solid professional with a professional mindset. Also, come to think of it, as I mentioned, he was also a people person. So, he worked in the high schools, and he was a coach, and he mentored the kids and the players, and he moved on to higher ed. He has a great legacy of people that he inspired. And that doesn't mean that's exactly my calling, because we're all different. So there have been a lot of people that I've mentored over the years, but I've had some really exceptional teachers as well, who maybe didn't know they were my mentors, but they still are.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, follow up to that question: is it something you would recommend for individuals that are in different stage of education or institutions to provide these formal mentoring programs to help their students and their staff?
Unequivocally, yes. Everyone should have a mentor, and I think everyone should be a mentor, and everyone should have multiple mentors. Uh, we, we really operate best when we have interactions with other people, and learning a little bit from some here, a little bit from there, different styles, but also, having someone that can, speak into our lives and just say, look, you're not making any progress, or don't go down that road, or you're best using your time in this way, or these are the kinds of things you don't always get from one person. So it's good to be involved in situations where we can have a lot of mentors, even if they're peers.
And if I may just mention something like this, this is something that most of our audience know, that I feel very strongly about. I believe I currently have a number of mentors that I am blessed by, and I learn and I grow. And these are something like you mentioned, they have a really frank and open relationship with you, where they can, tell you where you are not doing so well, and while they can encourage you that you are on the right path, and you can feel comfortable asking, how to overcome some of your challenges in life. And I think it means a lot, and it can do very well for individuals as well as organizations to adopt programs like this. Continue on the same path. I had one other question from you about internship. Do you think this is a good program to have? And if it is, how would the school go about creating these programs to help their students?
I love the internships and the schools working with the businesses and the government institutions and those that hire. Um, in fact, I would like to see a student, have a part-time job in their field every semester and get to see a whole lot of different things. And for instance, years ago, I worked for a GTE MobileNet that had a program for their college graduates. And what they would do is they would put that person in, it was a 2-year internship, but every 6 months, that person's intern went to very different parts of the company. So maybe 6 months it was sales, 6 months customer service, 6 months, R&D, whatever. To be able to give people a lot of different looks. I think uh, people end up in jobs they don't really look for or want to, so they kind of fall into a world of default. And sometimes it's pretty cool, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes you wouldn't know. But with these programs that put students in very different places every 3 months, every 4 months, however, but regularly, and give that student a lot of different looks. That intern over the 4-year school period will have a very good idea of a lot of different opportunities. And some things look good in paper, but in reality, they're not what you thought.
Well, I really appreciate you and your time. Now, let me ask you, would you like to leave our audience with a message from you before we say goodbye? And I just want you to know how much I appreciate your presence on this program, and I value your friendship and what you bring to the education board. Thank you so much, Chris.
Well, thanks, Abdi. I feel the same, and the feeling is mutual. Thank you. I would just like to tell the audience, thanks for listening. And the idea that we listen to others, and I think the learning will be mutual over the ways. And I hope to connect with you one way or another in another class, at another time, and we can learn from each other. And it's a great spirit to just keep and continue. And I look forward to that journey with you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Dr. Chris Page, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.